Hello and welcome to the Quantum Mogul podcast. This is the co-founder of Quantum Mogul, Jasmine Soori-Arachi with
Donal Kelleher.
And we are absolutely delighted and thrilled to have Brian Lenahan, Quantum Strategist Extraordinaire, as our inaugural guest on the Quantum Mogul podcast. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to share with our audience why I'm so excited that Brian is our very first guest. And that is because he is someone who has inspired my own deep passion for everything quantum. And I came to it as someone, as Brian knows, who has a bit of an atypical profile when it comes to being interested in quantum and science, though most people don't know that I have a background in psycholinguistic research along with the opera directing. But the reason why we were so excited to have Brian on as our very first guest is that he is the perfect example of a creative visionary who has really taken his own passion for quantum and created a global movement where we're able now to connect people all around the world and work together to learn more about quantum technologies. And when it comes to business, start learning the hype from what is, really applicable today, how we need to plan for the future when it comes to quantum expansion and quantum roadmaps. And Brian Lenahan is the expert in all things quantum here. So a little biography, a bit about Brian. He is the founder and chair of the Quantum Strategy Institute, which is a collaboration of both quantum experts and quantum enthusiasts like myself. He is also an Amazon 3 times best-selling author and the author of Quantum Boost, Using Quantum Computing to Supercharge Your Business. Perfect if you're a business owner looking to dive into this wonderful world of quantum and you want a great place to start. Then he's also the author of Quantum Excellence, How Leading Companies Are Deploying the Transformational Technology. And this is a beautiful overview of, is it 50 companies, Brian?
Correct.
That are currently leading the charge when it comes to quantum. So this is another great book to check out. And this one I am still working through. And I am a super fan of this one. And that's On the Shoulder of Giants, 10 Quantum Pioneers of the Past. And I hope you'll tell us a little bit about what made you passionate about writing this book as we get deeper into our interview. Finally, Brian is a LinkedIn top quantum voice with over 1.5 million impressions. And this was done in just 15 months. So Brian is the king of time collapses, we would say it, right, when it comes to a movement. And he's a leading quantum strategist working with companies to design unique quantum roadmaps. Finally, Brian is a sought-after speaker. You could see him animating all sorts of different discussions for economist events and speaking at quantum events all over the world. And he was a former executive with a top 10 North American bank. So a very, very interesting profile when it comes from going from banking to being, the founder and director of this incredible Quantum Strategy Institute. Could you tell us, Brian, a little bit about what made you so passionate and how you went from banking to your interest in AI and also now into quantum computing as a leading strategist and as a top LinkedIn quantum voice?
Well, I think you'll find that throughout the conversation that we have today, being practical is very much part of my DNA. So whenever I think about any technology, whether it was artificial intelligence before this, when I was writing books about that or consulting about artificial intelligence, for me, it's always about the business problem that we're trying to solve. If quantum technology is going to contribute to that, that's great. If artificial intelligence will, that's great. But if it's not, if it's digital or classical infrastructure, then I'm all for working with those systems. So for me, it was always about solving the business problem, whether you were trying to simulate a molecule or you were trying to improve traffic in a certain city, or you were working on a financial portfolio optimization, lots of different techniques, which we can talk about for our applications, rather, we can talk about later. But those are all classic business problems that we're looking to solve, not even to mention the challenges with cybersecurity. So, all of those business problems are the things that really drove me to connect with solutions that could actually address those. So I don't know if this is the right kind of point to talk about the Quantum Strategy Institute, but it's certainly, for me, the whole basis of the work that I've been doing is in how do I talk to a CEO or a CTO in 30 seconds and engage them on this topic and really fundamentally get them on the path towards, solving their key business problems with some great technology.
Absolutely fantastic. And really the focus of the Quantum Strategy Institute is so simple. And in business, we all have, no matter what the size of the business, there are so many competing priorities. And having that 20,000-foot view, which is a lot of what we do in our own consulting, helping companies with, is essential. And so to be able to cut through all of the noise and the hype and be able to decide, what is the best path to achieving your goal, I mean, that is so valuable to have a trusted advisor. So, I mean, the Quantum Strategy Institute fits a huge need there. It really does. In hearing this, what is the biggest misconception you feel that business owners and maybe even the public at large have about quantum? I follow you on LinkedIn, as you know, and you published a really interesting informal kind of survey where people were comparing how far quantum technologies, quantum computing had come, and that was an analogy with was it a computer in the 1940s? Is it an iPhone today? Where do you see, on the one hand, business people's perception around how far quantum is as a developed industry and technology, and its applications on the one hand, and what is the biggest misconception do you feel that people have when they hear quantum as a business owner, perhaps coming to this idea or coming to this concept or just coming to hearing about this for the first time?
Yeah, so it's so interesting that you say that, because when I started thinking about what quantum was going to mean for business in the next few years, I can really sort of summarize it in one sentence. It's a very nascent technology. It's brand new. Even though we've been talking about quantum physics for 100 years now, the actual technology associated with it is very, very new. But the thing is, it does have transformational potential. And so the second line, whenever a CEO or a CTO or a business person talks to me about this, they say, Brian, that's great. I'll talk to you in 10 years. But what I say to them then is that there are actual benefits they can achieve today with things like quantum-inspired capabilities, or even some hybrid opportunity where they can compare quantum with their classical systems. They can do it today. And they really need to start getting involved in it today, because the progress, the breakthroughs that are happening on a daily basis. And it's happening so quickly because so much has been invested, so many researchers, so many vendors, so many academics know the potential of this set of technologies. And we talk about quantum computing, quantum sensing, and quantum communication in broad terms. And believe it or not, there's a technology that is quantum sensing, which is far ahead of computing and communication. Very interesting applications there. So for the overall, I would say it's a nascent technology with great transformational potential. The thing is, what we're seeing today in the mass media is this question of hype. So, how much is overblown? How much is, just because you have 100 qubits, whatever that term means to you, what 100 qubits for a system, what can it actually accomplish? If I'm a business decision maker, that doesn't mean anything to me. What I'm really interested in is, what's the incremental benefit? What's the iterative process improvement for me and my company for using this technology? And what sort of risk do I have engaging in it? Am I going to spend a lot of money? The challenges we had in the past around AI winters was one of the things that drove me to create the Quantum Strategy Institute, because we kept seeing these situations of large investment, no results, zero investments, large investments, no results, and so on. And so I particularly really wanted to ensure that we didn't have that challenge, that we took those incremental improvements that we were gaining in quantum in 2023 and applying them to business.
Amazing.
And a question that I would have for you, Brian, because As you know, I'm very interested in the financial background, and I know you come from a banking background. Where do you see it having an effect? Or do you think it's going to have an amazing effect or a huge effect in the financial services industry?
Absolutely.
And if so, where do you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, there's ways to look at it just from a quantum perspective, but then also generative AI. So we're all seeing the impacts of ChatGPT, and people are looking into it. How can I create images, text, video, data to help me run my business better? Well, the same thing is going to happen with our world of banking, whether it is your virtual customer service representative who's actually going to have a huge boost in terms of contextualizing a customer's question. So in the past, you would program a customer's response. In the case of ChatGPT or its equivalents, you're actually giving it context. So you're really making a much more robust conversation. So if you think about the size of customer service back offices or call centers, if you can reduce the number of inquiries that are coming to a human being, you can put them onto more value add activities. And that's the way I always look at it when I talk to my clients. How can you take humans and put them into more value add activities? And so that's just one example where they're also looking at it very actively. JP Morgan Chase, HSBC, all looking at things like portfolio optimization. And Donal, you know very well that if you think about how real-time data decisions are being made in terms of your portfolio, the closer you can get to real life and not assumptions, then the closer you're going to get to a beneficial outcome for ROI or whatever other KPI or metric you're using in the business world, in the finance world. It's funny, I know your background a bit. You've been in the financial world for a while. Back in 2015, I did this analysis, and I looked at all the annual reports for a subset of banks, and I looked for the word innovation. Well, it didn't appear. And the reason it didn't appear was because innovation was associated with risk.
Yes.
Until we had all of these fintechs come along and start to say, we're going to apply artificial intelligence or other technologies to payments, to credit lending, and so on. And all of a sudden, the banks had to react to that, whether it was buying those companies or putting in services themselves. Now, fast forward to 2023, the banks are one of the leading sectors in the adoption of quantum technologies.
Incredible.
That's amazing. And one other question that I would have on that for you, because this is really interesting. This whole thing that's going on with the central bank digital currency at the moment, and this racket with the BRICS and the dollar and all this stuff going on. Will the dollar survive, and will it? Where do you see? What is your opinion on that? Not your opinion on what will succeed, right? But what is your opinion on the implementation of quantum inside in all of this?
Well, so I won't give you my opinion on whether it's the right thing to do. Well, what I will suggest to you is that quantum as a platform will accelerate the processing of data points.
Okay.
So if you think about it as the platform on which the software sits, then effectively what it's going to do is allow you to incorporate an exponential amount more data into your analysis. So whenever I think about quantum, I think about it as a technology for humanity's benefit and support. And I know that there are going to be, bad actor uses of any technology, but what I hope it's not going to be as a replacement or a control mechanism. So I know that quantum technologies are going to accelerate a lot of the potential that we have in terms of various different choices we're going to make. That's inevitable. But, as to whether it's the right choices or not, I really can't comment.
Okay.
And it actually aligns with so much of what we believe here at Quantum Mogul, which is with true intention to solve some of the greatest problems for humanity. There are going to be so many more people who are creating really valuable solutions because We're seeing people already in
And moving at speed as well.
yeah, we're seeing so many people, even volunteers, coming together in the AI world to reconstruct all kinds of things in the open source world. We're seeing the competition within industries and companies generating better solutions for the consumer. So it is a really exciting time. One of the things that struck me as a huge use case for quantum technologies was this area of cybersecurity. Could you talk to us a little bit about how our current encryption schemes are perhaps in terms of the research that's coming out about how powerful quantum computers are, vulnerable perhaps to an attack by a quantum computer, and how can quantum computers on the other end be part of the solution with post quantum cryptography or quantum cryptographic keys? Could you tell our more general audience, why is it a possible issue that we really need to start, businesses may need to start really looking at now to have enough runway to prepare for the future and to secure all of our sensitive information and our transactions, etc. Please tell us more.
If there's one message that your listeners and your audience can take away, it's exactly that from today, that they have to start preparing now. So, and there's lots of different ways we can talk about doing that. And there are free ways that they can start looking at that. So we can talk about that. But in terms of security of data, security of privacy, and so on, today's digital systems, the premier digital systems, are based on RSA 2048. So what does that mean? Well, it means security systems are based on factoring very, very large numbers. And it's a very difficult thing to do when you have larger and larger numbers, particularly even for today's supercomputer systems. So there's some feeling today that you do have that security of existing systems. Now, we've heard about hacks and so on. What quantum will do is completely change that dynamic. The first quantum computer that comes out, the truly fault-tolerant quantum computer, the one that has sufficient robustness and size and capability, which people talk about as being years away, but the first one that comes out, probably no one will hear about. So what does that mean for the world in terms of the person who is using that quantum computer or nefarious capabilities to actually take and decrypt your data? Because that's exactly what it will do, because it has exponential more power to factor those integers through your systems. So here's the challenge today. We're seeing a steal now, decrypt later phenomenon, where bad actors are stealing your data. They can't decrypt it, but they're stealing it and storing it in anticipation of a quantum computer arriving in the future. And so maybe if that's 20 years, then you don't really care about the data that occurred 20 years ago. But if it's faster, then you may be very concerned about that from your customer's perspective or your employee's perspective. So we're seeing a significant effort towards creating those quantum computers, again, for positive purposes and maybe for some negative purposes. On the flip side, we're also talking about post-quantum cryptography. So how can you protect your business against a quantum computer attack? Because in theory, if you have a quantum computer and the bad actor has a quantum computer, they can't steal your data. So that's a very important point, that if you're operating, and especially, I think I've heard you both talk about large companies, small companies, medium-sized companies. Well, in this case, large companies already are putting teams together. They're already investigating relationships with vendors. They're already putting together protocols around quantum for cybersecurity. But very few medium-sized and small companies are doing the same exercise. So there's a real there's a real challenge if they're, number one, don't even know what quantum means, let alone what quantum capabilities can do for their business.
And this is why quantum strategy is really indispensable for small and middle-sized businesses. if we look at, I don't know if the projections are there from the NIST or from any of these organizations, what is the kind of projected threat or projected damage in terms of dollars if people aren't protected in time? Not to be fear mongering, but just to have a more accurate idea of what this really represents in terms of a security threat.
And how close could it be?
How many years away? Yeah.
Yeah. And so whenever I talk about quantum technologies, I always talk about not a year, not a date, but a range. And so I must attend 5 or 6 cybersecurity conferences a year. And most of those cybersecurity conferences are quantum cybersecurity conferences. But every once in a while, I'll go to a pure cybersecurity conference. And generally speaking, in those latter groups, I'm the only one talking about quantum. And that is a major, major challenge in 2023. So we have the leading voices in cybersecurity, and in some cases, it doesn't even make the list. And so,
do you find that overwhelming? That you're on your own.
I guess I'm opportunistic about it, saying, well, they're going to call me for that conversation or that panel.
I admire your stickability, because that is not easy to be on your own talking about something like that. I just wonder how you deal with that.
Well, so I do it very much the same way I do with my consulting clients, where I'm talking about, if you don't invest $1 today, make sure you're investing some time into understanding what that threat is. And so, I'm not asking the audience to move, 20% of their tech budget into quantum. What I'm saying is, in 2023, you better be investigating this technology. You better investigating the threat that you both talked about. And so, if you think about a digital transformation roadmap for any given company. So I know I was involved in one, it was 5 to 10 years, digital transformation. So now you think about companies trying to integrate quantum technologies into their environment, you're talking years as well. So it's very important that they get started today.
Oh, I agree.
And if a company is really interested in creating that quantum strategy roadmap, what does that look like when they come and work with you and you're consulting? Does someone on their team then become educated in quantum, or what does it look like for a business to go through that process?
Well, I have to tell you that I really don't engage unless I have the CEO sitting at the table first.
Perfect. Yeah.
And that's probably, similar for you, but in this case, it's very difficult for someone who doesn't have the background that maybe I do in having a conversation with a CEO who says, look, I've got a million priorities. I've got a maxed IT budget. I've got customers breathing down my neck. Why should I be even listening to you about a technology that's not even mature?
Yeah, that's why I was asking you, how did you deal with that? Because I have the world of admiration for Visionaries, and it has been something that has haunted me all my life, right? Being so far ahead. And I was just really interested to see, how do you deal with that? Because it's so difficult. I agree with what you're saying, but it's so difficult to get that CEO to get his mind. And of course, I understand for the CEOs, their mind is 1,000 things happening, Well,
for yourself as well. Yeah.
Well, and I can have a conversation with the CEO and say, you'll get a 10% improvement on this process if you engage quantum technology. That doesn't go anywhere. My opening card with any CEO is, you need to be concerned about your customers' data, your employees' data, and that's imminent. There's your first risk if you don't start down the path of looking at quantum technologies. And so now I have their attention.
Yeah, that would do it.
And quite often when I'm having conversations, the CTO is also in the room, maybe a system architect, maybe a project manager. And it's incumbent upon me to speak in the language that makes most sense to each one of those people. I need to have the CEO nodding yes at the very beginning of this meeting. So all of a sudden, the ice is broken with the remainder of the people. And then I start speaking in the languages that each one of those needs to understand. The project manager, for example, he says, look, I've got a completely full list of projects. How can I even start to think about putting this on the roadmap? The system architect says, how am I going to integrate quantum and classical technologies together, in a meaningful way? And the CTO says, I'm spent. How can I possibly think about quantum? And by the way, you're going to have to really give me a better understanding of how this technology has progressed. When I read from certain experts in the field that it's nowhere near being a true business option.
That's fantastic, because you're really actually translating between the stakeholders and you understand what is priority for each person within, the top decision making and production part of the organization. So that's a beautiful, beautiful answer. I'd love for us to transition, because this podcast is really dedicated to other visionary, creative pioneers like yourself. And I know and believe that you have that resonance with this because of the book that you wrote, right? On the Shoulders of Giants. These are really incredible quantum pioneers of quantum technology. And I encourage everybody to go out and get the book. One of my favorite people was Elmer Imes. And I love the fact that he was such a polymath in so many ways. And yet there seem to be a lot of challenges when you are a visionary and you're starting a movement. Would you mind sharing with us when it came to your own passion for quantum and your knowing that you had an important part to play with the creation of the Quantum Strategy Institute, and also really the short time frame, like 15 months and 1.5 million impressions. People are hungry to learn about quantum. What were some of the challenges you faced moving into this space as a thought leader?
Well, you can imagine, as a former banker moving into a advanced technology space, you don't have the immediate credibility. But for me, the opposite was actually true, because there was such a thirst for people who had business capabilities, business experience to help tell the story about advanced technology. And if you go back about 5 years, I really started in the world of artificial intelligence. So I had the good fortune of retiring from my banking career and realized that after, less than 6 months, I really couldn't sit on the couch. And I needed to do something. And so I thought, well, what was my favorite part of working world? And it was always being the business liaison with IT teams. And so I thought, okay, well, what technology trend was trending at the time? And at that point, it was really artificial intelligence. And the best school for that was MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And so I decided that I would go there, take their AI strategy program, which was really where I wanted to focus. What I love to do whenever I talk to people, either students or new to the working world, or even CEOs, is I talk about inspiration. And so for me, it's not inspiring you to make more money. It's inspiring you to find the part of this technology space that really interests you. So, maybe that's an academic role, maybe that's a research role, maybe it's a specific type of, for example, in quantum sensing, there's a new technology called a quantum gravity gradiometer. And what you can do with that is you can look further into the depths of the Earth to understand what's underneath without disturbing the Earth. So you can imagine, not only if you're thinking about oil and gas, but if you're a treasure hunter, how can you use this kind of technology, or you're an archaeologist? So what I try to do is find practical applications that align with people's interests and marry those things together. I have to say, in writing on the Shoulders of Giants, that kept coming through over and over and over again, because each one of those giants had massive challenges that they had to overcome. And I know, for example, for me, how to go from a banker to somebody who's got credibility in the quantum world. I spent 3 years of hard work, really trying to understand the technology, but also understanding whether that technology was credible. Could I actually convert that into practical applications? Could I actually tell the story? And so, anybody who's willing to invest the hard work, they're going to find this space, this technology space of quantum, so exciting.
Beautiful.
It's brilliant. Amazing.
Beautiful. I had a couple of more questions in terms of your own legacy. You're an author, you're a speaker. If we fast forwarded 20 years from now, what do you see as part of the legacy that you are leaving the planet, both in being, a living embodiment of the curious and yet really down to earth and practical strategist in AI and quantum? How do you view your legacy, and what are you excited to create next?
So for me, my portfolio of activities really is in writing books, Substack, LinkedIn, conferences, panels, and of course the Quantum Strategy Institute. But I'll continue to do those things because I have been so blessed with never having writer's block. There are so many things to write about. There's so many interesting, breakthroughs every single day. There's so many interesting people to meet. And so I'm very much looking forward to doing those things. But I have to tell you, Jasmine, all of that pales in comparison to getting an email or getting a LinkedIn comment that says, "Brian, you inspired me." Mm. Mm. 2 years ago, I didn't know anything about this. Now I'm an analyst, now I'm a quantum engineer. And if I can continue to do that, I would be so thrilled with that kind of legacy, if you will. One of my other books was called Deep Health. And what I tried to do there was marry up one of my key passions around how do you maintain your, or how do you differentiate your chronological age with your biological age. I don't know if you've been familiar with this kind of difference, but essentially what, if you think about, where you are at a stage of life, how does your actual physiology compare? Is it more? Is it less? And so for me, that was a very important part because I felt like I had so much more to do that I needed to have the health to go along with that effort.
This is very
and so in the spirit of being an author, I knew I had to try to do the research to write a book about it. And so I coordinated with a colleague of mine who was a nutritional scientist. And so what we did was we took all the elements of the things we knew about health and married it with artificial intelligence. So how can you take vast amounts of data and about one person, yourself, and learn from it, whether it's through a smartwatch or through some other sort of pieces of technology? And for me, it's given me the energy level, the drive, the capability to deliver on all those things that I just talked about. But at the end of the day, when I see those messages from people in my network, that's the motivation I really need.
Well, that is the true legacy, really, and
Absolutely.
and that really is what Quantum Mogul is about as well. I remember myself, right, when I took some time off almost 10 years ago, and I done a tour, and I came back after a lot of traveling that time, and I saw that the world was missing lack of education and health and wealth. And I remember dedicating my life to it that time in 2015. And everyone said to me that time, "Good luck to you." That's why I asked you, how did you deal with being on your own? Because it is very lonely when people just laugh at you, But 8 years later, it's a different story now. Right? And that I can totally relate to that, because that is what really turns me on as well. When you see a real change in somebody's life, because of a journey you took, a positive change, teaching the person to fish rather than giving them the fish,
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I always have to look at it for myself from a graphic perspective. And I looked at myself as walking through the forest and then emerging from the forest. So, for me, it was doing all this by myself and then seeing that there was a vast group of people who were actually had the same interests and were willing to spend some time. So that was really sort of the genesis of the Quantum Strategy Institute. Do you mind if I tell that story?
We would love to hear it,
Yeah.
because my question was actually in terms of, what top tip would you give fellow future visionaries who are starting out and want to create a movement and who'd also love to get a team together as a community and get 1.5 million impressions on their work in just the space of 15 months? How can your experience help excel with the Quantum Strategy Institute help accelerate the dreams and visions of other creative pioneers who are so inspired by your journey? So please tell us the story.
So job one is just like Donal said, spending the time to make sure you really are very, very clear on what your passion is. You can, I really struggled with that at the very beginning, because, I had spent a lifetime working on what I thought I should do. So a career in banking to raise my family, that was key, and it was the right thing to do at the right time. But when I had the opportunity to retire, it was like going into a desert. You just had no idea. All the emails were gone, all the people were gone. You were all of a sudden on your own. And so for me, it was very much about, dissecting all those things in my life to that point that I'd really gotten excited about. And so, I had to, first of all, identify the things that I didn't want to do. And that was actually an easy journey to take, because for me, it discounted a lot of things and it left a smaller subset that I could actually wrap my hands around. And so when I started doing that, I started realizing that there was a situation where I would sit in a boardroom with an IT team and a business team at the head of the table, and just absolutely got so much excitement from the conversation that went on, and being able to bring something to fruition. One of the challenges that we had in a project environment, especially in a large bank, is everything takes 2 years. So how could I actually help this team reduce that amount of time to get whatever product or service or process we were trying to get out to market? And that to me was just so exciting, to be able to bring these people together. When I started attending quantum conferences, all I really saw were the vendors and the academics talking about their wares. And I didn't see anybody on the consumer side. And I thought that was very odd. Did that just mean that, there were, it was a shiny object with no buyers? Right. So I started talking to some like-minded people, and we started thinking about, okay, so how could we bring those consumers, those end users, those potential buyers to this technology in a way that spoke to them? So by telling stories, by attending conferences, by writing articles. And I soon started to bring some people who were very like-minded. Now we have people from large banks, large law firms, Google, who are on our board, our management team, our special advisors, major quantum companies. And each one of them have said, we agree, that's very much white space. We need to help consumers understand what's a very complex technology in a way that they can actually think about it and, to your point, put it on their roadmap. So for me, that was the instigation of the Institute, to be able to bring people together. And we're excited where we've landed in just this short period of time. We really started in September 21. We had our first international event just recently, and it was the International Quantum Strategy Day event. And eventually, and really what we were trying to do, we got a number of teams globally together. They competed in creating a 15-minute concise presentation on how to integrate strategy into a company's roadmap. Invaluable for any company as they think about how to think about this technology. And so we had some excitement around that event. We're going to continue it now on an annual basis. And we're just beginning. So, the Quantum Strategy Institute has now, almost, over 3,000 followers, all sorts of activities where we integrate. I speak to governments, I speak to corporations. And so it's a great opportunity for us to get the word out about quantum in a way that is practical. We don't have any government connections. We don't have any corporate connections. We don't have any sponsorships. We're completely independent. And so we try to create an objective understanding of what the current stage of quantum is, and also give people the idea of the potential. So we really want to accelerate the adoption of quantum, but we don't want to see that hype valley type of trajectory for this technology.
I think something you said there really hit it in the head. And you said you have to teach people how to think about how to think about quantum. Because when I heard about it first, it was like, where do I start to think about it? What am I thinking about? Right?
Yes.
I think that really is a starting point, actually.
So
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you
so
talk
key.
about, you talk about starting points. The starting point for me actually was YouTube.
Yeah.
I wanted a free way to understand what this technology was all about. And so, I graduated from YouTube to TU Delft and CERN and various other organizations who provide training on it. And so, for me, the level of understanding is I'm not a PhD. I don't have a PhD in quantum physics, and I don't need one, nor do your audience members. There are so many different roles in the quantum space, whether it's marketing, sales, communication, operations. There's so many different roles that people can get involved in that they don't have to have a pure science background.
And it's beautiful because quantum really is for everyone. We're seeing more and more incredible applications of quantum technology and quantum computing. I was so thrilled to see more and more companies and institutions coming out with free quantum computing 101, things that are fun, that are interactive, that really take into account that quantum is for everyone, and that we can learn about these amazing principles and how they have really practical and direct applications to our world today and are fundamental to the founding of our world of tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, I'll tell you just briefly, coming from a banking background, we were fraught with regulations. One of the
you know this too.
you know this, right? And compliance was very important.
Yeah.
It was only until this year that we've actually started seeing standards development for quantum technologies. So it is a bit of the Wild West as it relates to this technology. There aren't a lot of regulations, compliance capabilities. It's just really this year that we're starting to see that buildup of standards. So when I talk to CEOs, I have to make sure that they are actually aware that this technology has lots of potential. But if you're looking for a policy regulation from some body, it's not there yet. Now we're seeing things like you mentioned NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, doing work, especially with cybersecurity. We're seeing the IEEE engineers and so on who are actually, working on the same thing. So there's lots of progress there, but caution as well.
Well, I suppose it's hard to regulate something when we're at the stage that you have to teach people about how to think, because where do you start with regulating that? But I can see why the banking industry, it can go slow until it goes fast. You'd be well aware of that. I can see how they would move in it, because I know there was a survey done in Ireland, and I'm sure it's worldwide, about what was the most important thing to a human being, right? They interviewed many thousands of people, and it all came back to data. You would think it was maybe their health or something like that. They were more worried about their data than anything, and I definitely see that is the door opener for them, because data is a major issue and for every company, and especially financial services companies, because there's either a bank or an insurance company attached to everybody's life. So if you have an insurance policy, the moment you're alive, there's an insurance policy or a bank or something attached to you somewhere, and they have your data, and that is a major worry. That is no doubt.
Absolutely. Now, fortunately, in the quantum space, there are over 750 vendors already doing work in some way, shape, or form, and lots of those are in the world of cybersecurity. And so If you were to reach out to, maybe a consortium like the European Quantum Consortium or the US-based Quantum Economic Quantum Development Consortium, who have a huge marketplace of vendors, those opportunities for somebody who's thinking, okay, do I start getting into this? Is this important? How do I do that? There's a vast array of choices. And so important to get that trusted vendor status, at some point where you could start asking questions, start building pilots, doing proof of concepts, things that can really start to build that fortress around your company.
Beautiful.
Brilliant. Yeah.
These have been really the most incredibly practical and yet inspiring tips for companies that are looking to forge a path to the future while remaining really grounded and being able to prepare for the future now while seeing what really has the best fit in terms of their own unique objectives and goals.
Absolutely.
So it's just fantastic. Brian, where can people connect with you further? You mentioned Substack. I believe it was just today that you published something on generative AI and quantum and banking. So we talked about that just today. So if people want to check that out, where would they go to find out more on the Substack? And then where can people connect with you either for your consulting or to learn more about the Quantum Strategy Institute and become a part of this quantum revolution?
Sure. So they can look me up on Substack at brianlenahan.substack.com, or they can get in touch with me at chair@quantumstrategyinstitute.com.
Beautiful. Well, that was our inaugural edition of the Quantum Mogul podcast with quantum strategist, author, and speaker extraordinaire, Brian Lenahan. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Brilliant.
Thank you. And thank you for the work you're doing at Quantum Mogul.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.